I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel, and the time is 5:30. The board will now reconvene into open session. The time is 6:38. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the Matters from the Floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance, A, Lopez Middle School. Mr. Wernley.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Mica, executive staff, and guests. It is my pleasure to introduce Addie Burton, who will be giving our invocation today. Joining Addie is her father and mother, Jamie and Crystal Burton, and Addie's sister, Hallie, who I know are very proud. Would y'all stand up and just give a wave? Let me see. Addie is one of our most well-rounded kids. She is an athlete on our basketball team, and besides her calm and sweet nature, is quite tenacious on the court. Her first game, she was all over the place, and when I told her she had a good game, she said, well, she goes, my goal for next game is not to fall down anymore. And she improved at that, and the next game, I think it was only like 4 times you hit the ground, so it was pretty good. So, she's also one of our junior pals, our peer-assisted leadership group. She is also in the NJHS, Student Council, and on our Leader in Me Lighthouse team. Always helping everyone and reaching out to whoever needs it. We are lucky to have her on campus. It is also my pleasure to have with me Aiden Richard, who will be reciting the pledge tonight. Joining Aiden is his father and mother, Andrew and Miranda, as well as Aiden's sister, Peyton. Would y'all please rise? Aiden is one of our star basketball players. He is our point guard. He is a point guard on a very successful team. Aiden also excels academically and is a member of the National Junior Honor Society. His most difficult and most important task, though, is being my office aide. He's a super kid with a great attitude. Addie, would you like to get started?
Good evening. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. If you will, please bow your head and join me in prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for the opportunity to come and gather together this day. We ask that you would guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. We ask for you to give guidance to each of the board members as they make decisions that may affect the students, staff, faculty, alumni, and friends in the Northeast Independent School District. Help us to engage in meaningful discussions to nurture the bond of our community. Please help us keep open minds that what we may strive to accomplish is for the pursuit of truth for the greater good. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work and our goals this day. Thank you for the opportunities you give us to serve and to serve others. Please bless each and every one of us here tonight. I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, indivisible.
Yes, thank you very much. Addie and Aiden, would you come forward? We have a certificate for you, and we'd like to take a picture. Mr. Wernley, you can come forward too. And Mr. Hasso and Dr. Michael will come down. Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. You are welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go home because you probably have homework or you want to practice your basketball skills. So you're welcome to leave. But thank you again for being here. Item 6, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. I'm sorry, I forgot to read item 1. Had to turn the page. But that's what we approved. Item 2, possible action regarding proposed recommendation for termination of Chapter 21 probationary contract employee is no action. Item 3, possible action regarding proposed recommendation for termination of Chapter 21 term contract employee. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hasso. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item 4, possible action regarding hiring a principal of Walls Elementary School. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hasso. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item 5, introductions. Dr. Mica.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I begin the 2 introductions that we have, I do want to let the audience know that the new principal of Walsham Elementary School will be Elizabeth Washington. All right, so tonight we have 2 introductions that I'm bringing forward. Miss Brenda Oats, if you would stand, please. Brenda is our new Executive Director for Special Education. Brenda Oats is joining the Northeast ISD family as the Executive Director for Special Education. Before joining Northeast ISD, she was the Executive Director for Special Education and Student Services in Lavernia ISD. As an agricultural sciences teacher, Miss Oats had the pleasure of working with students of all ability levels and interests. She realized that some of her students with the greatest needs often had the fewest people supporting their efforts, and this led her to pursue a career in special education. Miss Oats received a bachelor's degree in agricultural business in 1993 from Sam Houston University and earned a master's degree in administration in 1998 from Sam Houston University. Mrs. Oats works diligently to live by the university's motto, "The measure of life is its service," and looks forward to serving the district. Miss Oats has 25 years in education. Welcome to Northeast, Brenda. Hold on now. I think you have some people joining you this evening, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you want to introduce them to the group?
My husband Chris and my daughter Delaney.
All right. So Brenda, if you will bring your family forward, we're going to join you quickly for a picture.
Congratulations.
Our next introduction is the new assistant principal at Roosevelt High School, Jenny Lee Taylor. There she is. Jenny Lee joined the Northeast ISD family in 2016. Starting her career in education as a substitute teacher, she knew she was impacting lives and discovered that she welcomed the structure of working towards a common goal, student success. Prior to being named the assistant principal of Roosevelt High School, She was the English Instructional Dean at Roosevelt High School. Ms. Taylor received a bachelor's degree in political science and English in 1999 from the State University of New York College at Buffalo and earned a master's degree in secondary teacher education in 2013 from the University of Phoenix. Ms. Taylor has 6 years in education. Congratulations. Do you have anybody that you brought with you this evening that you'd like to introduce?
I do. I have my daughter Madison Callan with me and my principal, Mr. Miller.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. So that concludes our introductions for this evening. We don't typically do it with assistant principals. They got to get to principalship. So she's got a new goal. Brian, she's going to work you out of a job.
Item B, possible action on the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pursuant to Government Code Section 551.072, no action. C, possible action regarding consultation with board's attorney pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071, 1, pending and/or possible litigation, no action. Item 7, presentations. A, Communications Department overview. Ms. Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, board members, Dr. Mica, executive staff, and guests. It is my distinct pleasure tonight to get to share with you information about one of my passions, which is the communications world. Before we get started, I do just have to quickly give kudos to Lila Stanley, who's running the computer from across the way, because she was absolutely instrumental in helping with this presentation. And I'd also like to call up, please, Scott Chidgey, our social media marketing coordinator, because he will participate in a portion of this presentation and then also be available for questions should you have them at the end. So tonight we are going to basically tell you guys about the changes that we've made and that we are continuing to make in the communications department and the significant impact that we've seen from those changes. So in the past, traditionally, I would say Northeast ISD did what the majority of ISDs did. We would go out and we would cover events, and we would give a summary of those events, kind of surface level, the who, what, when, where, why type of thing. But we didn't really get too deep into it, right? And those were the type of events that if you were already in Northeast ISD, well, you thought they were great. The students, the parents, that sort of thing. They really resonated with people already inside of our school district. And as we all know, over the past few years, if we can get, there we go. There's been a real significant change that we're pretty much all aware of in this room. The choices are endless for parents, and they're making a lot of different choices. And they're researching those choices, and a lot of where they get their information now is on the internet, online, and also on social media. That's where they're gathering their information, and they're making their decisions based on a lot of those things. So we really kind of had to shift our thinking, and we knew that the stories we were telling about our district, about our students, about our staff were more important than they have really ever been before. Lila, could you help me out because this thing's kind of sticking? Thank you. So we had to decide what we wanted people to think about when they heard about Northeast ISD, what they associated our district with. We knew that we needed to start telling those stories that would resonate with people outside of our district, people who didn't have a connection to Northeast ISD. And we needed to figure out really what our brand would be. And simply put, a brand is really a fancy way of saying it's what people believe when they hear about you. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And so we put a few at the bottom here, which we hope y'all will also think the same things that we think. But Volvo, you automatically think safety. And if we're honest, in 2019, there are many vehicles, maybe most vehicles, that are either just as safe or even safer than Volvo at this point. But we still associate safety with Volvo. That's because that's what they want us to. That's how they tell their story. Apple, of course, it's innovation. And Amazon, when all of our awesome, cute packages arrive on our front doorstep, you know, it's all about convenience. And some people call this advertising, some people call this marketing. At the end of the day, it really comes down to just telling your story. It's the stories that they tell that lead us to believe these things about their products. So we all know HEB. A lot of us probably wait for those precious commercials of all the Spurs players, and they're funny, and they're telling their story. And at the end of the day, we think about customer service with HEB. We think about quality. We think about that slogan, "No store does more." They're telling their story in that way. The next example we have is Nike. I mean, they've made that check mark, that swoosh, absolutely famous. They tell great stories, and when I was trying to decide, I wanted to give you guys a good example of one of their commercials, and it was really so hard because I think Nike is one of probably the most fantastic storytellers with their commercials because they make us feel something. And I want to show you all a quick example of that.
And this team, symbolic of the hard work they put in. Wow, it's real.
What happened, Daddy?
This is bigger than the game of basketball. This is about all of Northeast Ohio, everybody. Whether you come from Lakewood, from Avon, from Menor, Akron, we were with LeBron, we were with Kyrie and JR. We were right there with them. I almost don't know what to say right now. Look at it. I don't know if they know what to do. It's been 50 years. Come on, we can celebrate, people. We're the champs.
So I show you this because whether you care about LeBron or the Cavs or basketball, the NBA, or sports in general, most of us in this room all felt something from watching that commercial. And it's exactly what they wanted us to feel. It's universal, whether you're into Nike or whether you're not into Nike. They facilitate an emotional response from people by watching that. So that led us to what story should we be telling? So we conducted a parent survey last year. I know many of you are aware of that. And we wanted to know what our parents thought. And these were the top 5 items that our parents in the Northeast Independent School District said that they cared about. And as you can see, 3 of the top 5, all have to do with people. So over the summer and this school year, we've really focused on that. We've focused on really getting to the heart of those stories and telling really people-focused stories. So we wanted to give you a few examples about how things have changed. This is one example from last year versus this year of the first day of school at Castle Hills. So for those of you who may not know, Castle Hills starts in July. So this was really our first kind of experiment, if you will, on really making sure that we were going to tell a really focused, personal story. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that last year, we covered the event, the who, what, when, where, why, as we talked about. But we said things like, they had a breakfast for parents that included donuts and coffee and other delicious treats. Well, all of that is factual. I'm not sure that that elicits an emotional response, right? It's just kind of, this is what happened. And it was fine. But again, this year, we wanted to go out and show the difference. So this year, we found a parent. We really focused on telling her first day through her eyes. And she had so many fantastic things to say about the school and about why she was excited. And then, we quoted her several times in the article, but we talked about how she moved to Castle Hills and 4 years ago, and she has absolutely loved the unorthodox year-round schedule. Now, we went a step further here. There's a couple of things I want to point out. I know you can't see the entire article, but we talk about in the article that it's a Leader in Me school. We talk about how it's unique and it's different. And then as you can see, the reason it's blue, the unorthodox year-round schedule, is because we included a clickable link. So if you didn't know that we had this awesome unusual, different, unique thing here in any ISD, you can click and it takes you to all of that information. So we went that step further, realizing that people needed to discover the great things that we have. And so we wanted to advertise that, but also tell the personal story. So you can see on this next slide here, it really made a difference. On the left, this is the social media post about that first day, and it has 8,546 people that were reached. Now, to give you some perspective, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong here, but at this point, we were looking for about 3,000 people reached on our posts. Is that correct? Okay, so 3,000. That was a great post if we got 3,000. Now, we look for 5,000 because we've pushed that needle. But either way, in this instance, 8,500 people reached. We knew all of a sudden, hey, we're onto something here. This was really our first aha moment, that people were paying attention and people were noticing, and we were giving them what they wanted. And an added bonus from this, on the right here, perhaps because so many people were reached, News 4 San Antonio did a story on it, didn't even call me, which they just took it straight from our Facebook. They courtesied us, and with our pictures over there, and then they even talked about how we have this year-round school. So they did this advertising for us, and then all of the people that reached. So we have another example to show you guys. This is a standard ribbon cutting, and we know that not all stories are going to immediately be super emotional, right? We're gonna have to figure it out a little bit to make them personable. And a ribbon cutting, you know, it's one of those events. So this is the example that we have from last year, and then this one, this school year in September. And on the left, we told all of the facts, and then on the right, we knew that ahead of time we needed to plan how to make it different. So we decided ahead of time we were going to find somebody to tell a great story. So we found a teacher who has been working at Garner for more than 10 years, had so many fantastic things to say about Garner, then had so many fantastic things to say about the leadership, the district overall, that sort of thing. And we told the ribbon cutting kind of through her eyes. And as you can see on here, it really made a huge impact because the people reached were more than double than what we had done previously. And it was all because we were telling the story just a little bit differently. Another example here is Lee Cosmetology students giving free haircuts to our Alma students. And obviously this is amazing. It's cute, we've got precious, adorable kiddos, but we wanted to make sure, A, that everyone knew that we have this amazing cosmetology program. So we talked a little bit about that. We found parents who said why it's a great program, and then we also found those Alma students' parents who said, wow, this is amazing that they're doing this for us. So again, just really a community-based story that we were telling through the eyes. Instead of just telling it through the third person, we were telling it, you know, from their standpoint. And this made a huge difference. The people reached here 8,400. So we had a great response with that. I wanted to put this one up here because this is a recent example. This was a huge story. I don't think we could have gone wrong with this no matter what. But I put this here because of this. This was a really cool thing that I had happen personally to me about my department. So we put up all these stories, and we had wonderful people who were in New York City sending us these pictures, and Scott was on his Thanksgiving holiday putting them all up there. And again, it didn't matter what we said or what we did. These were going to get great numbers. This is what we called social gold. Because it's great, because they were at the Today Show, because they're in New York City, because they're on national TV, all of those reasons, right? But I put this one up here because I was so proud of the fact that Scott went the extra mile, and he said, we're not just going to throw this stuff up there. I want to hear something from this drum major. I want a quote from him to talk about how not only Reagan, but any ISD has affected and shaped his life, okay? And so here's my point in putting this up here, is that regardless of the numbers, and we knew they were going to be great, regardless of the numbers, it was ingrained in us now. it was my department, it was just standard practice that we were going to continue to tell the personalized stories, even if we didn't have to, and even if we didn't need to. And that was where I really thought we had turned a corner, because now it's just second nature, and we're going to stay on our brand, and we're going to continue to tell those people stories, even if this was going to get 12,000 people reached no matter what. And so I thought that was just really cool. So these are the facts of storytelling. These are just some of the facts, I would say. But, you know, if you give somebody facts, you give somebody figures, or you tell a story, it's 22 times more memorable with a story. And this makes perfect sense. We think about it. We grow up and we tell our kids stories, and we tell our elementary students stories. And then when you want them to do something, you know, maybe you make up a little story. Because we know it's effective. It does something to our brains that makes us remember. It says there that, you know, it lights up the sensory cortex. And so we thought, how in the heck can we capitalize on this even more? Because we're on to something. And so Dr. Mica was kind enough to approve a multimedia journalist position. And what that means is, in the news world, they call this a one-man band. They do everything themselves. They call, they set up the story, they go out, they do the interviews, they shoot all the video for it, they come back, they write the story, they edit the story, and it's all in one single day, which is a lot. But we were able to get somebody from Ken's 5, who has been doing this for a while, to go out and find those personal stories. And Ashley Speller came to us in October. And if you haven't seen her stories, I wanted to give you one quick example of what she does for us.
In a packed cafeteria at Wilderness Oak Elementary, lines of hungry students are ready to eat. But for the youngest diners, it's not always easy to get started.
I had a lot of trouble opening my stuff, especially when I got salad. I couldn't open the box.
9-year-old Ben remembers what it was like to be a kindergartner, struggling to open food containers and milk boxes.
Opening milk to drink is really important. I just think it's really helpful to have people on the job working.
Ben decided to step in and help, joining the school's Tater Tot Patrol.
The job too is to help them open their food and stuff and have a good conversation with them. And it's just fun to hear what their day has been all day.
Ma'am, do you need help with opening your water?
We started it last year as a way to give our 4th graders an opportunity to serve and show their leadership skills in the cafeteria.
Assistant Principal Milcy Perez says it opens up positive conversation between the students and helps brighten their day.
Power of the pack. Love that. There was one time, a very sweet little boy, he came into the cafeteria and he was just extra somber that day. And one of the Tater Tot Patrols that were assigned to his table went and they gave him a hug and helped him open up his food and just sat with him for a second. And just that extra minute of attention, just so that that child knows I am important and I can get help from everyone in the school because we're a family here.
Students in the Tater Tot Patrol give up 15 minutes of their lunchtime to help the kindergartners.
What you do is you go like this, and then you go like that.
I have friends in kindergarten now. Just from doing this, I have friends in kindergarten. And it just feels good to help them out.
Tater Tot Patrols like Ben are spreading a positive message.
I want to be a computer scientist, and I want to build computers when I'm older. And so I want to encourage these kids to get a good job and have a good lifetime.
I think that one of our purposes is to teach kids that they can serve in little ways or big ways, in any way that they, feel called to do so.
Discover the NEISD way, where our educators create a welcoming environment for every student.
So obviously, Ben is, gold, right? He's amazing. But I want to show you the numbers that did. 22,000 people were reached by that, which is just, crazy. And then again, another added bonus, the news called me and said, we have to come out and do that story. And just so y'all know, some of my job, I call the news, I try to pitch these stories, and they aren't always interested. But when they can see it and how adorable it can be, and then they're calling me to say, hey, can we come out to that school? That's pretty amazing. So we were able to arrange it, and the news went back out there the next week and did this exact same story, and then did more reach for us and more advertising on how cool our kids are and how we're teaching them to be leaders, and just all of those things. It was really amazing. So here are some more numbers on Ashley's story. So again, she came to us in October, okay? So this is a snapshot from October 7th to October 18th. Her stories, her video stories are the ones there in yellow. And the other stories in white are the other stories that we have been producing. Doing well, but as you can see, the stories that Ashley produces, they're by far our highest performing. And at the bottom there, Soldier coming home, 25,000 reach. And so again, the proof is in the pudding, really. The next page, we have another snapshot for you a month after that, just to make sure it wasn't just something new or out of the ordinary. This was November 4th to November 15th. And again, her videos are there in yellow. And you can see that all of them have just such a high number. And remember, we're looking for that 5,000. If it's 5,000, it's a hugely successful story. And so it's just really showing us the effectiveness of these types of stories. I want to ask Scott now to kind of take it from here, and he can talk a little bit more about the social media strategy and how that's impacting us as well.
All right, thank you. So yeah, this slide. So you Aubrey talked about how we were changing how we're going to tell our story. It's going to be heartfelt and more personal stories. So how does that translate? How does this change translate to social media? That's kind of what my job is to do. So step one, Facebook Live. Dr. Mica graciously took the leap of going onto Facebook Live, and it's a risk. We took a calculated risk because we believed, as Dr. Mica said, in the transparency, that if we communicate with our community, that we will earn their trust. And that's exactly what happened. So you can see on the top left corner, that was Dr. Mica's first Facebook Live. And he was introducing himself to the community, taking questions, unprompted, just there they are. Huge risk, again, but did fantastic, which was really cool to see. First day of school, bottom left, or getting ready for the first day of school, in a campus, talking to a principal, talking to a teacher. The community reacted really well. Our numbers, you can't see them there because they're pretty tiny, but I kept them there because they're good. So just know they are performing very, very well, which is good to know. On the bottom right, you'll see with Chief McCampbell, and we did a security and safety Facebook Live. And that was another big risk that was, that's on everyone's mind. That's parents, they're very concerned about that, and they want to know what's going on. And so Dr. Mica, Chief McCampbell, took that risk and went live, and it did wonderful. We answered people's questions. And so what we learned through all this is that as long as we're transparent and informative, we have noticed that, I have noticed, because I'm in charge of answering all the comments and questions and things like that, there has been a tremendous decrease in negative comments. We have even had people thank us, people who normally don't thank us for talking about security. That's a win. So I was pretty excited. So Facebook Live, that's step one, right? Next one. Campus Facebook pages. So again, Dr. Mica, a big initiative was, hey, communications, Scott, you're going to do one campus Facebook page for every campus. Okay, so this summer that was a large task. So I went out there, created them. Some of them were already created. We got them under the Northeast umbrella. And a lot of people were curious, why are we doing this? Like, why? Principals had an honest question of, I'm adding this to my list. Like, this is another thing that we're going to have to look at. And they have been pleasantly surprised with the results, because as you can see on the left there, that's something that is from my monitor. I have all the schools organized by clusters. So I'm now able to monitor everything that's going on in the campus, on the campuses across the district, what people are doing. It keeps us in the loop, but also we're able to monitor the comments and things like that. And all of these were launched when we rolled this out, with me going to campuses, training, strategizing, and doing that, making the people feel comfortable. And that's Hebron Elementary School. So campus Facebook pages. And then how did they work out? Let's see. So here we go. This is one of my favorite examples of a campus Facebook page. The power of a campus Facebook page. So here is Hardy Oak Elementary School. This is their page, okay? And on the left, you'll see they have, these are students who receive special needs, special education services, and they work with their teacher to deliver coffee around the hallway. So teachers will buy it, and you learn counting skills and budgeting and all kinds. It's a great learning lesson, but it's also fantastic for the morale of the community. Well, a teacher saw this, and not their teacher, and she just snapped it with her camera or with her phone. And hey, are these people media cleared? You know, puts it up there, and then I see it. That screen I showed you where I monitor the district. I see this come through, and I'm like, whoa! As Aubrey said, this is social gold. Like, this is amazing. This is personal stories. Our teachers excelling. Like, our kids happy. This is great. So I take that, and so we've now shared it to Stone Oak, right? Like the Hardy Oak, Stone Oak area. Then I take it, because I've seen it through that campus page, I take it and I put it on Northeast. So now 25,000 people, not all of them have seen it, but they have a possibility. Well, over 500,000 people were reached. That post reached 500,000 people. I mean, that to me, the power of a little campus Facebook page made that difference. And on top of it all, guess what? Aubrey got a phone call. Yep, news wanted to come out. So news came out, did a story on it. And it was a great story. And I've had people outside of the district contact us about this story. So this is one of my favorite ones because it just shows the power of the campus Facebook pages. And also a little side note on this, as I talked about when we were rolling it out, like getting everybody on board. That was kind of a challenge, you know, it was something new. This principal, Hardy Oak principal Lola Folks, she'll let me say it because she's presented on it before. She did not believe, she was a little scared of the social media. And she, you know, the librarian called me to come out and say, hey, can we get on social media? Absolutely not, said Mrs. Folks. And I said, okay, well, why? Like, because I'm scared. And the parents, comments, questions. I said, I get it, that's cool, okay. Well, eventually we got there. And we helped her set up a whole team, somebody from each grade level, and she still kind of watched it from afar, you know. But she started hearing things in the bus lanes and when parents were dropping off kids. What's going on? They're talking all these great things about going on Facebook page. So she gets on there. Well, now she's one of the best posters. So, and she'll tell you just the power of that page and what she noticed, again, like with our Facebook Live, the transparency and with the commenting, that the negative comments, they're not there. People aren't, because they can't hide. There's so much good going on. So that's a side note. But anyways, those are campus Facebook pages. So that was another initiative of getting the stories out there. Okay, so how, you know, we tell our story differently. We get that personal story. We have our campus Facebook pages. We're going live. We're doing different things. And they brought on a full-time position. So now my full-time is social media. I was split up between doing stories at one time with the foundation as well. And so now it's full-time social media marketing coordinator. So we have all these things going on. So what are the results? Well, they're right there. And I don't know, it's pretty blurry, so you can't really see it. But that first big jump in the middle of the page, that's in May. And so I love that jump because that is when we started changing how we told our story, when we started launching the campus Facebook pages, and when they were transitioning me to full-time. You can see it, and it doesn't stop. We continue that, so it doubles. So that's why when Aubrey says the reach was 3,000 and now it's 5,000, yeah, that's how it happened because we have doubled, we've over doubled our reach. And then to continue, if you go to the next slide, Lila, thanks. It goes on with, so that was reach, how many people we reach a day. But this is now how many people like and follow the page. Again, that May. There's a very large jump. And a lot of that can be, you say, why? Just telling your story differently. People got invested. They were invested. And so many people were sharing our content and are continuing to share this content. And so that means they're proud. They put it on their own page. That's the biggest compliment you can get. And that's how the followers are growing so insanely fast. I mean, you can just see it. I love it. And so we went from, in November, like 20,000 around there, to we are approaching 26,000. And you think the page has been alive since 2013. So that is a very, very large jump. And next slide. And there it is. So from week to week, just I get a little snapshot. They let me get it for a week, and I get to see all the school districts from around the state, city and the state, and how the engagement is, and how, like, the amount of increase in followers. And consistently, we are the fastest growing Texas ISD for the past 2 years since I've gotten here. We are consistently the fastest growing, if not the top 3 always, throughout the state. But I will say that for the past 2 years, and especially the past 8 months when we've changed everything, past 8 months, I think we've only in the city not been the fastest growing maybe once. I mean, we are growing that fast, which is really fun. That means we're connecting with our audience. That's what that means. So yeah, there's that. And then, what's next? What's next? Okay, so we say, well, this is awesome. What are we doing? I get a lot of people talking about Instagram. I go to campuses, I help them set up, Facebook, and I talk to them, and they say, hey, what about Instagram? I got a lot of people on that. And so we're looking at that, because the great thing is that Facebook and Instagram are owned by one another. So they are really easy to press a button and it go out to all of them. Okay, so it's not tons of added work. But yeah, so what's next? We're looking at Instagram. And then I believe we have any questions for Aubrey or I?
We are here to answer anything you may have.
Oh my gosh. This is so exciting. And I love your passion. And Aubrey, to watch you as you were telling the story of marketing, I can tell it is your passion. It was very endearing, and I am so excited that your team is handling our marketing, and I just can't say enough. Oh my gosh, that was awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you go back to this, I think the slide that talked about the top 5? It was early on, maybe slide 3 or 4 or something. So you have quality of administration and quality of school administration. What's the difference? One is district?
Yes, ma'am. So administration could be in this building.
Okay, so one is district administration and the other is school. And then on your likes, I don't know, on the page,
Tell us if we're getting warm on one of these.
oh, go back one,
Okay.
2. The 500,000 plus.
Ah.
Yes. So reached. What does reached actually mean on a page? Like
I'm going to let Scott answer
Right,
that
yeah.
one.
So reached means that's how many people saw. So like say, this all gets very confusing, right? So let me say I see it on my mobile device, right? And I'm like, oh, this is great. It's in my feed. I've been reached. Okay, so that's one. Now say Lila shares it and it's on, so now I'm seeing it again, right? Because she's my friend and I see it, it doesn't count. So that means we reached 500,000 individuals.
So there's not like duplicates
There.
if
That's why I try to
folks
say-
go back to that
No,
page
ma'am.
again.
No, ma'am. And one of the great things or just something that was cool to see about that one was the comments that came back were coming from all over the country. And they were inspiring others to do this in their program. They were saying, hey, we need to do this. One was in Minnesota, and I was like, another Louisiana. And it's like, wow, like that's amazing.
So if
Yeah.
you've been counted once,
Yeah.
you cannot be counted
No.
again.
Well,
So
no,
that's
we
that's
reached over
unique
500,000.
individual people. Yes.
Because I know sometimes on websites, if you click, then they count clicks.
That's right.
I could go on a website and click 50 times and that's.
And then it counts as 50.
clicks. Yeah.
That's right. That's why the
Or 500,000
reach
times.
is pretty cool because it's not a click. It's the individual reach. So if I see it on the Northeast site and I also see it on the campus site and then I also see it on Scott's Facebook page and then I also see it on, I'm still only one.
Okay, thank you.
I have one comment, but only to really comment, I guess, on the power of social media, because specifically with the ban and Thanksgiving, as I was kind of clicking in or browsing, liking, and sharing, and, just commenting myself on my Facebook page and stuff, it immediately has a reach across the country. Friends of mine that I grew up with on the East Coast were liking that. And not that means that somebody from Virginia is going to move to San Antonio just to go to Reagan. But, nevertheless, we can all hope, right? But nevertheless, it just sends that out there, that look at, some of the great things, that we're doing. And as a matter of fact, ironically, I did have a person that I went to middle school with in Virginia whose for a time was living in San Antonio, and kids were in the district and in that cluster, and so they had a connection too with some of the people that were there, and so that was kind of nice to keep them appraised of what was going on. But nevertheless, it's great. I think it's wonderful work that you all are doing, and a step in the right direction. Absolutely.
Thank you.
This one. Okay. I'm learning here.
That's fine.
I am learning.
Omar has a question.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Can you tell us what the difference between the reach and what does an engagement mean?
I'm going to let Scott take this
Okay.
one because he can explain it far better than I.
Okay, so hi there.
Hi.
So an engagement is when you have either clicked it. So like if it's, so this one, let's take this one right here.
Okay.
There was multiple photos, right? So if you're clicking on the photos to see that, that's an engagement. If you're clicking where it says read more, that's engagement. If you click on it so that it gets big, that's engagement. If you're commenting, like such a cute story, engagement. If you like somebody's comment, engagement. So it's any way that they're engaging aside from just
But if it's just in your feed and you don't do anything with
No
it,
engagement.
that won't count as an engagement.
It's a reach then.
That's right.
We reach.
Yes,
You
We
reach.
reached you
perfect.
perfectly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
That's why engagement is also another great thing to see our engagement numbers. That's why like really good.
Thanks.
Okay, and I apologize. I forgot this was your first meeting.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
yeah. I would like to introduce our newest board member. Hey, I'm not ever afraid to say that I made a mistake. So I made a mistake, and Omar, I'm so sorry that I didn't introduce you at the beginning.
it's okay.
Omar Leos is our new Board of Trustees, so welcome him, please.
Thanks. Thank you.
So in that same thing, Terry asked me to ask for Omar. In all seriousness, you talked about Instagram being the what's next.
Yes.
Are you looking at, or is the department looking at other, like what else is out there, not just Instagram, things that might be on the horizon or?
Always. So whenever I hear of an app, whenever I hear of something going on, I download it just to be following. But I ask people. I mean, when I go places, when I watch what people, and we all do, we watch what people are on. We look for longevity, like TikTok. Yeah? Yeah? Okay, cool,
TikTok,
right?
there you go.
We're not going to be on there. I mean, we look for an appropriate fit. There are new ones coming around that have large audiences, but they're not on our board, right? They're not where our parents are. But we have parents that are now, like I'm a grandpa of millennials, and we are now, all my friends have kids. They have kids in our schools, and they're on Instagram, a lot of them, more than they are Facebook.
Sure.
And so that's why we're looking towards that. But we're always keeping our eyes out.
Yeah, well, especially those of us that are social media illiterate. We reach the parents very successfully. Are we doing anything to engage students at this kind of level as well?
Can I think?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, great question. Great question. So I was given a presentation the other day to high school kids. Hey, what are you on? They were mixed down the board, but most of them, it was Shack, the Shack committee. Hey, I'm on this, I'm on that. But they're on Instagram. And the really cool thing that I'm finding a way to reach them by saying, hey, this is a great project that you're doing. Can we find out more about it? Their organization, they're on Instagram. They've created, WC Parliament. They're on there, Winner Circle. And so that's a way to reach the kiddos. Not Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat goes away.
Yeah.
Anything else? This was awesome. Great presentation, Aubrey. Scott, Lila, thank you for, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot.
That's okay.
Dr. Mica.
Wow.
If you must.
I'm sorry, I'm going to say something.
I forgot, I'm sorry. I'm old, I'm the oldest one on the table.
No, what I want to say, a couple of things. So, David, to answer your piece, we have used that survey that we push out and are about to push out again to really look at where our community and our parents are living right now, and that's been the focus. I think with the work that you guys charged me very early on with the student voice, I think that's that next piece. All right? That has not been a focus for me. It's really been been pushing it out to the community. Why Facebook? Because we knew through that survey 65% of our people were on Facebook. So we began where most of them were living. But, you know, you've heard it in many different ways. We deal with kids from 1 month old to 100 years old, right, for people. And so everybody lives in a different area, in a different space. And so Instagram's reaching a different level. But we began where we felt like we could win, and Facebook was that place because 65% of them, 65% of our community are using that social media platform. Before we move on, if you'll just, I really have to take a moment to thank Aubrey, Scott, Lila, Christina, all of her department. I cannot tell you all how much heavy lifting this has been. You know, this was not easy. It wasn't. This was truly changing a mindset about how we do what we do. And it was a leap of faith because nobody really did it this way. And so, Ms. Williams, if you remember, you talked about ROI with me, return on investment, right? So this has always been a focus of ours, is it working? And how do we know that it's working? And is it doing what we intended it to do? And so, you know, Scott gets excited about everything. And so I don't. I'm a little more skeptical. And so as I've been watching, and Scott's been very gracious about giving me this type of data, and so has Aubrey, as we've watched it gain momentum, and to see that our investment of time, resources, and energy are paying off in the amount of people that are going in. But I want you to know that they've really done a great job, and it's been hard to change mindsets, but Aubrey's done a great job of leading it through, getting those folks on board, and I really cannot thank them enough for the work that they've done. So they've done a great job.
Are you finished?
I'm done.
Because now Tony wants to say something.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me, Dr. Mica. So Twitter, is that something that you would say is more just internal amongst district and the staff, or because I know it's maybe, or is it a little harder to share it or to tell the story on Twitter versus Facebook? Or
Depends on the number of characters you have. If you
yeah, well, I guess that's a limiting. Yeah.
Twitter is, in my opinion, Twitter is very useful for professional development, for sharing what's going on campuses, ideas. It's fantastic. For reaching our parents, most of our parents, like Dr. Mica said, the 65%, Twitter is not that arena.
Gotcha.
Now it's not something that, in my opinion, should be abandoned, because it's also where people go, you know, hey, snow day, when they need information, it's for news, that information, that kind of stuff. But, you know, there's also people on there looking for stories, so I put stuff on there, because at that chat meeting, kids raise their hand, I'm on Twitter. I was like, all right, okay, I'll keep posting for you. But, so, I don't know, it's hard to answer that.
Okay. No, thank you. That helped. It did.
And Tony and Scott will tell you that each platform has a different purpose for its use. So one of the things I think we learned very early on is we can't just duplicate stories, right?
Right.
Like you just can't say, hey, this is a Facebook story, so let me push it out to every platform we have. That's not very effective, so that's something that they adapted with and to.
Awesome job. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you very much. Item 8, new business for possible board action. A, board policy. 1, possible action regarding board policy CW local naming facilities, first reading. Dr. Newman.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Mica, executive staff, and guests. We have just added one sentence to board policy CW local. Consideration for this honor really should include the candidate's entire Northeast career. So that's why we brought this to you and are requesting your approval on the first reading of CW local.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about this? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve first reading of CW local naming facilities revisions as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item 2, possible action regarding revisions to board policy EIC local. Dr. Newman.
Thank you again, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Mica, executive staff, and guests. At this time, I'd like to ask Colleen Borman, our Executive Director of Learning Support Services, and Gary Hardcastle, our Senior Director of Learning Support Services, to address this agenda item.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is going to be our first read for EIC Local, and EIC is our rank policy, and so we're excited to bring this work to you. This has been about 19 months of work and a process, and so the presentation you're getting ready to see is a presentation that we've given about 20 times to different stakeholder groups. We did that intentionally to keep the presentation the same, just like Scott said, for trust and transparency. This has always been a hot topic for our parents, and so we wanted to be sure as we work through this process that we really were transparent through that process. So when we talk about any policy review, well, we want to ground our work in 2 pillars. And any policy we review, we want the stakeholders to understand that continuous improvement is natural and normal for an organization. In Northeast, continuous improvement is something that we naturally do. And so when we look at policies, it's okay to change policies, right? It's okay. That's part of our work. So we ground our work in that belief. The other, am I clicking? You're clicking.
I got it for you. Here, I'll get it.
Thank you, dear. The other thing as we look at policy, we want to be sure that our policy reflects our values, that the result that we have reflects our values. And we opened every single meeting with the mission statement from Northeast. And I always say, when Ms. Grona opens the board meeting, she reminds everyone of the statement. And I said, for me personally, as someone sitting in the audience, it reminds me to remember, is our policy, our programs, and our practices all grounded in that? So the policy work we're doing today is reflective of that. The next 2 pieces that you'll see there are Dr. Mica's priorities, right? You know them. Competing in the educational marketplace. We talked about that. We want to be sure that our policy enables students to participate in the educational marketplace. And on the flip side of that, we want to be sure our schools are producing students. Our schools are competing in the educational marketplace as well. The social emotional part, as you think about rank policy, it's really important we have just the right tension on social emotional learning when we think about rank. We want to be sure that we're pushing the students to a rigorous coursework, but when is it too much? So when is that right tension? So as we looked at the rank policy, we wanted to be sure that policy sat right in that sweet spot. Did it sit right in the sweet spot for kiddos? Were they able to be stretched, but not stretched so much that it was causing anxiety for kids? And the third one we talk about is innovation. We want to be sure in Northeast, as we look at our policy, we want to be sure that we are innovative. Are these best practices? Is this cutting edge? Is this the latest about rank? So those 2 pillars were the pieces that ground our work as we work through this process. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Gary Hardcastle. Gary Hardcastle is the Senior Director for Learning Support Services, and one of the things one of the hats he wears is really policy review. He's an expert, and really the yang to my yang, or the yang to my yang. I would have not wanted to go on this 19-month journey with anybody else but Gary, simply because of his expertise in policy. And I've just appreciated the support as we've gone through this process together. So, Gary, I'm kicking it to you.
Well, thank you, thank you. I hope that my presentation is as energetic as Aubrey Chancellor's and Scott Chidgey's.
Hard to follow that one.
It is not good to be behind them. But one of the things that I'll talk a lot about throughout the slides that I'm going to be discussing tonight are those 3 tenets that are there now: the competition in the educational marketplace, social emotional learning, and innovation. You're going to hear those common threads throughout this presentation. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is we're going to review rank and how we rank children in Northeast ISD. I'm going to talk a little bit about the committee process that brings us here to this presentation tonight. And I'm going to review the proposed changes that we're going to ask that you consider at the end of this presentation. And I will say this is for current 7th graders. We're not making any recommendations to 8th graders or higher. Any kid that's in high school is on a system that they're in today, is a system that they began high school. We're not making any proposals to the system that they're being ranked with. And then ultimately, we're going to be requesting that you guys either approve EIC local or give us further instructions. So EIC legal is where our local policy resides, or it derives from EIC legal. And basically, the state of Texas says that we have to rank the top 10% of our graduating class in Northeast ISD. Our current EIC local policy began in 2006. And there was a very large committee that was brought together by the district administration at that time and developed the policy that we're living with today. In 2014, we made some adjustments to EIC local that reflected some of the challenges and the changes made to us by HB 5 or House Bill 5 and the graduation requirements. So we made a few modifications in 2014, but predominantly our rank system is the same system that we've had in place since 2006. Now, the next bullet reads, how do we define a cohort in Northeast ISD? That's very important to our rank system because it's all about the cohort that the student is in. Northeast defines a student cohort as that group of kids who entered high school together. So they complete 8th grade, they begin their 9th grade year, that defines their cohort. In our system in Northeast ISD, a student cannot change his cohort. So if a student graduates in 3 years, we don't bump them up to that graduating cohort. A lot of school districts in the state of Texas define a cohort by when the students finish high school, not by when they begin high school. We define a cohort for that group of students who entered high school together, and they're forever ranked based on that group that they entered high school with. We find that to be very, very fair to children and very consistent. Okay? With NEISD, our rank policy today, we only rank those courses that are required for graduation. I'll give a brief example. In a high school career, a student will have 7 opportunities to earn credits in his freshman year, sophomore, junior, and senior year. 4 times 7 is 28 credits. They basically have 28 opportunities to earn 26 credits. Now, we also use a multiplier system. That multiplier is applied to semester averages, or whatever the semester grade earned. We do not add a multiplier to a progress report at 3 weeks, 6 weeks, or a report card at 9 weeks. It's only applied to those semester averages. We also do not rank high school credits earned in middle school. A large portion of our 8th graders earn Algebra 1 in 8th grade. But there's also other courses that they can earn in middle school that are high school credits. Those credits will not be calculated in the student's final rank. Now, before you here is the list of committee members that Dr. Newman brought together some 19 months ago. And I would like to point out that Dr. Sean Mica's name appears on that list, but at that time his role was assistant superintendent and he acted in that capacity. Today, of course, he's our superintendent, but his role there was as our assistant superintendent. Very knowledgeable group that we brought together. That group comprises middle and high school administrators, parents of Northeast ISD, also employees of Northeast ISD, a large group of people to help our committee process. So that process included several rank meetings. And when I say several, there were several rank meetings. Colleen and I were just kind of whispering a few moments ago, this is probably the 20th time we've done this presentation. So in that process, what we did, we looked at literature that was available to us. And the literature wasn't just what we saw was a trend in the state of Texas, but what was the trends that were happening across our nation. And interestingly enough, we found out that there are a lot of states that are looking very, very closely at the policies of ranking our high school students. And they're making some major changes in recent years to their rank policies. We also looked at the state of Texas, what's going on in the state of Texas. Depending on which piece of literature you look at, there are 1,201, some will say it's a little bit different, but there's 1,201 school districts in the state of Texas. So there's 1,201 different ways that rank is calculated in the state of Texas. And we tried to look at that. We did not look at every single rank policy in the state of Texas, but we looked at quite a few rank policies in the state of Texas. But then we also compared ourselves to that core group of school districts that have very similar demographics to Northeast ISD. It's that common group of about 15 school districts, the Northside ISDs, the Katy ISDs, those school districts that have very similar demographics as Northeast ISD, and we made comparisons to what they have in place, recent changes they've made, or we've reached out to them and asked them, are they planning on changes? And quite a few of them are planning on changes. We then contacted College Board. Questions that we ask of College Board is, in a high school career for a typical student, how many AP courses is considered that normal number of AP courses? And their answer was kind of shocking to us. They said 4, maybe 5 AP courses. Well, we have students in Northeast ISD that are graduating from high school having taken 15 and 16 AP courses. So our kids are very, very competitive when it comes to rank. Goes back to that social and emotional piece. Where is that normal amount of tension? Enough to get our kids interested in taking the rigorous courses, but not so much tension that we're forcing kids to take more AP courses. We then contacted a lot of college admissions personnel, and I'm going to show you a few slides that Texas A&M shared with me in a few moments in this presentation. And we asked them the questions, and quite interesting. It's a very interesting group to be a college admissions person, because I could call the same university and talk to 2 different admissions people and get 2 different answers. Kind of like the state of Texas, 1,201 school districts, 1,201 different ways of doing things. So we got a lot of information there. But the primary question we asked of college admissions people were, how do you review rank? When we send you a rank for a Northeast kid, what do you do with that information? A lot of the common threads that we got back, it's nothing more than just a pulse. It's a data point. It's something that we use. Of course, in the state of Texas, we have automatic admission for those kids in the top 10% for all schools except for UT Austin. So they say we have to look at it for that, but after that, we use other criteria. And that's the piece that makes us most nervous. When they stop using what we're trying to produce and they put our numbers into their system. We're very, very concerned about what the implications might be for Northeast kids there. And I'll touch upon that a little bit more in a few minutes. Then we took our knowledge base, we kind of put it all together, we come up with some recommendations that we'll be talking about in just a moment, but then Dr. Newman challenged us, says, Gary, we need to go out, we need to get this out there, we need to get some feedback, and we presented to a lot of different groups. We presented to the DEIC not once, but twice. They were our first big group that we presented to, and they were one of our last big groups to present to. We went to our BTA executive board. All of our secondary principals, that's middle school and high school principals, have had this presentation. The curriculum assistant principals at our high school level, they got the presentation. All secondary counselors, again, middle school and high school counselors. And then we did cluster presentations. We presented to our parents and students of 7th graders throughout the district, and we did that through cluster presentations. It was ineffective. We had about 12 minutes to get a lot of presentations out there to our community. So what we did, we clustered those presentations according to the high schools that those middle schools fed into. For example, we went to Jackson Middle School, and Jackson hosted the Nimitz campus, and because that was a Lee feeder pattern for us. So we did all 7 of those presentations and had some great feedback on that. So ultimately, there are 2 things that we're asking the Board of Trustees this evening. I know that there's 3 items there. I'll explain the 3rd item in a moment. But the common thread for changes revolved around the rank multipliers and the reporting of those students in the top 10% of our classes, graduating classes. The 3rd item that we brought to these presentations was the number of AP credits students are allowed to take in the first 2 years of high school. So I'll touch on that a little bit later. That particular item does not read in EIC local or is governed in EIC local. That is just another practice that we follow in Northeast ISD, but it has implications to any EIC local now. So what does rank look like in Northeast today? That calculation shall be determined by taking multipliers and applying them to our semester averages. Today, if a student takes an AP course, an AP GT course, an AP dual credit course, any course that culminates to an AP exam, the multiplier for that particular grade will be a 1.29. I'm going to keep math simple. It's not one of my strengths, I should say, but a perfect grade of 100 in a semester grade in an AP course, you multiply that by 1.29, a student earns 129 rank points. That is what we do today. What our proposal is that we lower that to 1.15.
Insane.
Again, using the same scenario, a perfect 100 would result in 115 rank points. We find that that is very consistent in the state. You know, again, there's 1,200 ways of doing this, but it's very consistent. It stays innovative. It keeps us in that educational marketplace. It keeps us competitive in that educational marketplace as well. With the pre-AP courses, today, our multiplier is 1.15. And I'll say pre-AP, our honors courses, our GT courses that are not AP designated, and those dual credit courses that are not AP designated, that multiplier today is 1.15. Our recommendation is that that multiplier be lowered to a 1.08. Then we have courses that we term on level or regular courses. These are courses that are just courses that are there are non-enriched courses. PE is an example of a non-enriched course. World Geography on level is a non-enriched course. A perfect 100 affords the student 100 rank points. So the multiplier is a 1.0, does not change anything. Now in our presentations, you know, a lot of people ask us the question, where did that 1.29 come from? Where did the 1.15 come from? So I'm going to take us back to 2006. The 1.29 came from the average or the number of rank points a student would receive if he was taking an AP course and scored a 70 in an AP course. You multiply 70 times 1.29, that student would then go to an A. That student would have 90 rank points. So the multiplier was derived by taking that lowest passing grade and multiplying it and getting them to an A. And consequently, the 1.15, if a student scored a 70 in a pre-AP class or an honors class, you do the 1.15 multiplier, you get 80 rank points. They go from a 70 to an 80. And our calculations show that we're doing one letter grade for an AP course based on a grade of 70 and 8 points for a student who scored a 70 in a pre-AP course or an honors course. Okay,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah,
for
that I knew.
student,
Mhm.
excuse me? No. Oh, I'm sorry. For students who enter ninth grade in the 2021-22 school year, a lot of 20s and 21s in that science, and beyond, we are recommending to the Board of Trustees that we only rank those students in the top 10% of their class. Any student that does not have a rank in the top 10% will not be ranked. And students will always have access to their GPAs using our current system in MIS for our student information system, Skyward. They'll always be able to see a running total of their GPA during that time. Now, top 10% is what the state requires. But there are some schools that have a top 25% rule. Texas A&M is going to be our example tonight. And you'll see on the slide that's before you, 2018 class, freshman class, the top 10% rule, what is required by state law, you'll see that 51% of the freshman seats went to those students who ranked in the top 10% of their class, automatic admission. There's nothing that Texas A&M can do about that. There's nothing that Northeast can do about that. That's a state law. Number of seats that they have available, 51% of them were filled up by the top 10% rule. The second slide I'm going to show you is Texas A&M currently has what they term academic admit. And this is automatic admission for students who are in the top 25% of their class. But those students who are not in top 10, but in the top 25, there are other thresholds that they have to meet. And some of those thresholds are certain scores on SAT, certain scores on ACT. But you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of that slide, another 16% of the seats available to students in the freshman class are taken up by academic admit. But please look at the statement, asterisk at the lower left-hand corner of that slide. Beginning with applicants in the fall of 2021, academic admit will no longer be a practice at Texas A&M. So major universities in the state of Texas are starting to say, we are not looking at our kids in the top 25%. We want to go to what's on this next slide, holistic review. So I'm going to kind of navigate back with these slides. I apologize for trying to cause confusion. 51% automatic admission, another 16% to academic admit. That only leaves 33% of those seats available to qualify students under holistic review. We want Northeast ISD students to rank very highly when they're looking at these students for holistic review. The good thing is when Texas A&M no longer uses academic admit, you'll see here 51% of those seats or thereabouts will be going to automatic admission, whereas the other 49% of those students will then have an opportunity to get into their seats using holistic review. Again, we want Northeast ISD students to be the most competitive in those categories. Now, this is that one item that does not reside in EIC local, but has implications to rank. Currently in Northeast ISD, if you're a student who enters high school, and that typically they're freshman or sophomore, those first 2 years of high school, we limit those students to the number of AP courses they can take. Again, back to that social tension that Colleen spoke of earlier. We want them to try that. We want them to take rigorous courses, but we don't want them to feel that they must take rigorous courses to remain competitive. The very last thing we want is our system of ranking students to incentivize students to get out of our athletic programs, get out of our fine arts programs, and say, I got to take AP courses that I'm not very much interested in, but I just have to do that to remain competitive with my class. So today, it is a 2 AP credit limit. We're going to propose that with this cohort that enters in 21-22 school year, that those students be allowed to expand that and take 3 AP courses. But we also want to qualify. These are college-level courses that 14 and 15-year-old students are attempting, and they're doing well. But we don't want them to say, I can't be in band because I have to take more AP courses. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I know it's not time for questions. Currently, it's 2.
2 credits, yes, ma'am.
So explain the rationale of going up to 3 if we're trying to tell our students not to go into band or fine arts or...
What we did in the past year and a half, we moved down to grade 9, AP Human Geography.
Okay.
So in doing so, you know, now students are taking AP Human Geography as 9th graders, and they're doing very, very well. They're taking the AP exam, and they're getting the 3s, 4s, and 5s. What they're doing then in 10th grade, they only have one more AP credit opportunity, and we felt like we were tracking kids into social studies. So if you were going to be an AP kid and you're going to take your 2 credits, they were going to be social studies credits, which that is wonderful if you're a social studies teacher like I was. I think that's the greatest thing in the whole wide world. But we want students to have options. So
I'm sorry, so really it's 1 that they could take as a 9th grader, and then 2 that they could take as 10th, or are there 2 options as a 9th grader?
I'll also take us over to our dual language program. Our dual language program in 8th grade, our target course for them is AP Spanish in 8th grade. So when they get to high school, we want them to have another AP opportunity because we have the AP literature course that they can take. So again, if a student is in the dual language program, goes through elementary all the way to high school, when they get to high school, we want them to have an opportunity. So you could have a student who needs to be in AP Spanish because the dual language program wants to take the AP Human Geography that all the other students are taking, and for us not to have to say to that 10th grader, I'm sorry, you've already taken your 2 AP credits, you can't have any more.
Okay.
To answer your question,
kind of give them an opportunity to diversify.
Okay.
it's any combination. You could take 3 as a freshman if you wanted to.
Correct.
There's not really available to you, but it's 3 within 9th and 10th grade.
Okay.
We also have AP Computer Sciences that are very, very attractive to our students, especially in the magnet programs. So it gives them an opportunity where we can go that route. Students who take pre-AP Biology in 9th grade get a perfect 100. You know, they're going to ask us, I'd like to go straight into AP Biology as a 10th grader. So we give them provisions for that as well. So it's
Okay.
really just to give them more opportunity.
Some options, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
And
you.
not-
Sorry I interrupted.
and
No.
that's great, but those are great questions. But staying very attuned to that social tension that Colleen talked
Okay.
about a little bit earlier. So again, the 3 AP credits we'll consider, or that's a consideration for you guys tonight, to expand that to 3 credits. And I say 3 credits, it's not 3 courses. The example I used in my presentations is government, economics are 2 courses, but they're 2 semester courses. That could be just 1 credit. So a student in 10th grade could say, I'm going to take AP government and AP economics. That's only 1 credit, but it is 2 courses.
Say that again?
Okay. The limit is 2 credits, not 2 courses.
Okay.
Okay?
So tonight, what we're seeking is approval for the first reading of the proposed EIC. What I want you to know is Rick Lopez was so valuable in this process too, just as a resource as we wrote the policy. You may see the change in order. We really wanted it to be user-friendly, parent-friendly, so as you read the policy, it kind of flowed. It had a different flow to it. But we have to thank Rick Lopez for helping us with that. So that's what we're seeking tonight. If you have any questions, it's a lot to digest, especially if you've not had or any understanding of rank, and so we're open.
Questions?
I have a question. So just for clarification, cohort is not the same as graduating class.
No, ma'am, that is true. That's a true statement.
Okay. So rank points versus GPA. So back in the old days when I was in school.
Yes, ma'am. I was with you.
you don't laugh. Nah. You were ranked basically based on your GPA.
Correct.
Everybody, I don't remember. I mean, there were extra points provided if you took honors classes.
Credit.
Right. But there wasn't this separation of rank points versus GPA. And everybody was pretty much ranked, just based on that one value of your GPA. So now what I'm hearing, there's everyone still, they can go to Skyward and track their GPA, but then there's a different system for ranking.
That is correct.
Weighted grade average.
Right, the WGA that's in
Yeah.
your proposal here.
Yes, ma'am.
And is your multiplier is kind of sounding like it's on a curve?
Well,
You know what I mean?
It's to recognize the rigor of that course. It's, I'll go back to what you started with back when we were in high school. If you took an honors class, whatever your grade was, they may have given you 5 points. It was a value-added system. So if you scored a 95 in that honors class, you really ended up with 100 in that honors class. Our system does the very same, very similar to that. It's just if you end up with a 90, we're going to apply a multiplier of 1.29 to that 90, and then that is how many rank points that we're going to use in that calculation. I would also add that with a grade point average, a grade point average is going to take into consideration everything. But I'll go back to that slide earlier where I said, we only rank what's required for graduation. So that changes things a little bit. We all know that graduation requirements, English 1, English 2, English 3, required courses. Algebra 1, geometry, required courses. But what's the benefit to our students is what goes into that 6.5 bucket of electives. Now, that bucket is the most important bucket to a student in our system. That bucket is only going to hold the highest point values to that student. So if a student takes AP Calculus, even though that's an advanced math, it's also an elective. So when that AP Calculus grade is put into that elective bucket, it will move out some of those other courses with lower point values. So the highest point values that go into that elective bucket is what will be included in that student's calculation for rank.
Okay.
It's not a simple system, but it's very equitable. And like I said, we've been doing this for 2006, and it's a rock-solid system. That's why our proposed changes to you tonight are just those two items. We did not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have a solid system. The how we do it is still strong. We're just looking at what we do with those numbers.
I was wondering how I got an A in physics and, and got to college, and it was so much harder.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else have any questions?
I've got a couple of questions.
David has some.
Yeah, I have some questions.
My mic's not on.
Is there anything that regulates this across the state, or across the country?
No, sir.
Okay.
We've been asking the state for quite a few years to say, you know, it is such a difficult topic for any superintendent. It truly is. You know, just polling superintendents in the state of Texas, you ask them, what is the one thing you never want to touch? They're all going to say rank is the one thing.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you, sir. So we did a good job, I'm hoping. But the state, all they have is what's in legal. You have to rank your top 10%. Do with it what you will.
So there's nothing to say
Come up with a board
that-
policy and go at it.
If we don't want to make our kids look great across the state, we give them like 200s or something like that instead of 129. It's more of just a question. I mean, you explained where the numbers come from, which was helpful.
Because if you're too much of an outlier, David,
Yeah. Then
universities are smart.
Sure.
And they pick up on that. And so then they begin looking at you a little differently.
The other question I had is more related to the it's taking effect for next year's 8th graders, correct?
Today's 7th graders?
Today's 7th
Yes, sir.
graders.
That is a correct statement.
And if I'm reading this correctly, we're allowing students to get high school credit in 8th grade, but
And
they are
7th grade.
correct, but they are not. None of that is. Why is that not factoring into?
Well, that's
why are
a
they not getting the
very
multipliers
good
if
question.
they're doing pre-AP and all that stuff in
Well,
7th and 8th grade?
rank is a high school issue. It's
Right.
not a middle school issue. Even though we have high school credit opportunities for kids, this topic is not explained to them by middle school counselors. This is a high school topic. That's when we spend the most time educating our children on the importance, and EIC legal requires that those students entering high school, that we discuss with them and teach them the importance of top 10% and automatic admissions to state universities. So we feel if we're not educating a 6th grader doing a 7th grade choice slip and decides to take a high school credit CTE course, and then to discuss the complexities that I've tried to keep as simple as I can, it's just, we feel it's not fair to that 7th grader, and nor do we want all 7th graders to feel, well, if Colleen takes a high school credit course, I can't be a football player now. I have to take a high school credit course. I have to forego that. So it's been, since 2006, it's only been those courses earned in high school.
So I guess then the next question would be then why are we not just making it effective for this year's 8th graders going into 9th grade?
Another great question, because those 7th graders are making those choices to take especially Algebra 1 in middle school. That is a required course for graduation. That would be calculated. So it gives them the opportunity, gives us the opportunity to discuss that. And that's why our presentations included our middle school principals and counselors, so they can begin having those conversations with students.
And I know there are parents that they're 5th grade, they're already targeting where their kids are going to college and all that. And so trying to balance that social emotional learning aspect of it, giving the kids that are advanced and taking those pre-AP classes in middle school, giving them their due credit, but not forcing a lot of stress and information down their throats. It just seemed, I don't know, I understand what you're saying. It seems there's we're explaining to everybody in middle school to get ready for things, but then we're not giving them the opportunity to do anything with it until they get to high school. And so I guess it's a little bit of a disconnect for me, and I don't know where it is. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's hard to, I guess, in my simple head, figure out. We're giving them all this information on one hand, but we're saying, what? Worry about it, but don't worry about it until you get to ninth grade.
Mr. Byer, if I could interject for just a minute. I think it's also just setting the stage for these seventh graders to choose a pathway in high school. If they're taking some of these courses in the 8th grade for high school, that will help them in their course selection when they get to 9th, 10th, and so on. So it's giving them an opportunity to advance a little bit more. And it was important that we bring it to you now because our 7th graders will be choosing next month, am I correct, in January, their 8th grade courses. So that's the timing for this as well.
And I understand it makes sense. It's a little bit, I can't even think of the words, but obviously I was not in the pre-AP and AP classes at that.
Well, if you have
anyway,
any other questions, we'll answer for you.
I think I have the answer.
I have to say, I think
it seems
AP PE
strange
would be the only thing I can
that
qualify for.
We're giving them all this information. We're saying, hey, you need to start worrying about multipliers, but don't worry about it for 2 years, but we're going to tell you about it now. So you go ahead and make those decisions to take those classes, but we're not going to give you any credit for it. Or we're going to give you credit, but not the multipliers, so.
Right, and I think, having been a middle school principal, I'm thinking of some of my 12-year-olds in middle school,
right.
and
Yeah, 11 and 12-year-olds, you're not thinking of that.
Correct.
So.
Mr. Byer, if I may add one other piece. There's a charter school located within the boundaries of Northeast ISD that allows students to take several AP courses. They're allowed to take the courses. They're not allowed to take the AP exam unless they meet certain benchmarks. Those students are Northeast students who've left us in the 5th grade and come back to us in the 9th grade. And if we were to include all of those calculations, then we would see an exodus of our brightest children wanting to go to that particular charter school to amass points that Northeast students who chose to stay with us would not have that opportunity. So we do feel that we would, if we included the calculation of those courses in middle school, we would be setting up an unfair advantage to students who chose to leave us at 5th grade and come back to us at 9th grade. Because now I have to look at those courses and say, well, guess what? You get all those rank points for that, and that could be harmful to our kids that stay in Northeast ISD.
I know it's a complicated issue, and I'm certainly not advocating to change any of the language, just trying to understand it a little bit better. But I think going in this direction, especially having young kids getting into this now in the district, is a great move after hearing from some of my fellow board members and their kids going through this. So thank you for all the work y'all are doing.
I have one question that I think will be easy to answer. But so I'm looking at the policy and the determination for the honor graduates. Do we take just the raw average, or is it the weighted average that determines whether? Okay. Okay.
So if you look at that, our SUMAs have grade averages of 100 or higher. So to be a SUMA graduate, we would have to include those weighted
that's right.
averages.
Okay.
So this potentially could reduce the number of SUMA grads and honor grads when you reduce that.
The multiplier.
Mhm. Did anybody else have any questions? No. I just want to thank you and your team and committee for all the hard work. I know that you've spent a lot of time on this, and I really appreciate everything that y'all have done to bring forth this policy.
And Mrs. Groen, if I could just add to that, these two individuals have done so much work for 19 months. There is a lot of brain power that went into this from the very beginning, and these two took a very, very difficult topic and with their team presented during these 19 months in a way that people can understand, and I want to thank them very much. It's good work.
Yeah. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So on that, do I have a motion to approve the first reading of the EIC local policy change?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item 3, possible action regarding update 114, first reading. We are going to take no action on this, and it will come back in January. Item B, resolutions. 1, possible action regarding resolution for School Board Recognition Month. Dr. Mica.
Thank you, Madam President. It's my pleasure tonight to bring to y'all something that you can vote on to recognize yourselves. That's pretty awesome right there.
Does it come with a pay raise?
You know what?
I'll vote 100% pay increase.
So I was looking at multipliers for board members' pay raises, and I'm going to take your salary, I'm going to multiply it by 1.36. That will give you exactly 0.
Is this for this year's board members or a couple of years?
But as you, those of you that have been on the board for a while, and those that are brand new to us, January is Board Recognition Month. So I have a quick resolution that I'd like to read to you all for your consideration tonight. So whereas the mission of the public schools is to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to a democratic society and an ever-changing world. And whereas local school board members are committed to children and believe that all children can be successful learners and that the best education is tailored to the individual needs of the child. And whereas local school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our students. And whereas local school board members are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system, and whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district. Now, therefore, I, Sean Mica, do hereby declare my appreciation to the members of the Northeast Independent School Board and proclaim the month of January 2020 as School Board Recognition Month. So what I'm asking for this evening is for you all to vote for yourselves.
Do we have to approve?
Well, you don't have to, Mrs. Groen. You don't have to do anything. But I will say before you do vote, and the staff in the audience has heard me say this many times, I cannot say enough how blessed we are to have this board. It is unlike anything I've ever seen before. These, and with the addition of Mr. Leos, are the most passionate, committed people I've ever had the pleasure to work with as far as the school board goes. For those of you that know, the very first question that the Rivard report asked me on being appointed as interim was, when did you put your hat in the ring? And I said in 1995 as a brand new teacher crossing the threshold of Lakeland Elementary, I knew I wanted to be a superintendent. Never in my wildest imaginations did I think I would get a board like this. We are blessed every day. I'm blessed every day to work with them. They are super committed to this school district, not to their district, but to the district as a whole. And so I could not go tonight without saying that, Mrs. Grona, and to the rest of the board. They're just something special. We're lucky to have them and very fortunate.
Thank you. So I think we can only approve this if Jason promises to do funny pictures of us on the video for next month.
No.
Something different this year.
Oh, something different. Oh, now I'm nervous.
We'll put it on
Yeah.
Facebook, see how many likes we get.
Yes. Hey,
Reaches.
I think maybe
Reaches.
we should do Facebook Live for that.
I see a TikTok video in our future. Just saying.
Snapchat. Okay, in all seriousness, do I have a motion to approve the resolution proclaiming January 2020 as School Board Recognition Month?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hasso. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Item 2, possible action regarding resolution for Mentor Month. Ms. Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, board members, Dr. Mica, executive staff, and guests. I'd like to ask Brooke Pate, who is our volunteer resource manager, up to the podium to address this item.
Good evening. Whereas any ISD students benefit greatly when community, business, and parent partners in education actively participate in children's intellectual, emotional, and social growth by supporting them, and whereas these unique partners provide mentors for students of all levels, kindergarten through 12th grade, with many opportunities to learn skills, succeed academically, acquire knowledge, and make wise choices. Whereas these mentors represent local business leaders and employees from large and small businesses, community leaders, community volunteers, parents, neighborhood volunteers, and patrons that support the Northeast Independent School District's programs. Whereas mentors work to positively impact students by social and career mentoring, job shadowing, tutoring, serving at-risk students, promoting a drug-free environment, encouraging athletics and the arts, assisting educators, and showing children that they care about their education. These mentors, together with the school, teachers, and administrators, create a great learning environment in our school district. Members of the board, because of the efforts of all of our mentors and volunteers, I ask that you support the Mentor Month resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Pate. Do I have any comments, questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution recognizing January 2020 as Mentor Month?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item C, Instruction and Campus Administration. 1, possible action regarding 2020-2021 proposed school calendar. Mr. Jarrett.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Mica, executive staff, and guests. At this time, I would like to ask Colleen Berman, Executive Director for Learning and Support Services, to come to the podium and review the proposed 2021 school calendar.
Good evening again. Tonight, we do bring to you the 2021 calendar. As you look at it, it does meet all the legal requirements within the state. It does have 75,600 minutes. Just a little bit on our process, because we do have some new board members. Typically what happens, executive staff creates, gives us guidance, and we create 2 calendars. At that time, the calendars are sent to the campuses. The campuses vote, and then from there we take that to DEIC. When the campuses voted this year, they had 2 calendars, and calendar A, which you have in front of you, was 99% of the campuses wanted calendar A, and 1% was calendar B. When we took it to DEIC, the vote was the same. DEIC's recommendation is we went with calendar A. Just kind of an overview, it does have 187 days overall. The students will attend 177 days. It begins August 17th, so it is a DOI calendar where we're not starting on the 4th day of, the 4th Monday of August. We'll start on the 3rd, and we finish May 27th, 2021. And so tonight we're seeking approval for the calendar for 2021. Questions?
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ms. Borman, I know that this past year, the earlier start date proved to be a little bit of a challenge. Are we going to be addressing that? I mean, I prefer the early start date, so that's not a problem. That's not my point. It's making sure that we do a better job maybe of getting the word out. I thought we did a great job, apparently.
Thank you for that
There was some
question.
confusion.
That came up with executive staff, and Dr. Mica, you jump in. The 2 calendars we presented, one was DOI, which you're seeing here. The calendar B that we presented was a traditional calendar that would have started later. 99% of them wanted to begin early again and end. So I think it's that initial, when you lose that first week, you're like, I'm going back early. This summer, of course, we'll have an extra week. But I think it's just that adjustment. Dr. Mica?
Yeah, and Ms. Hugh, that's a great question, because we had some really good conversation with Ms. Borman and executive staff. So in switching this year to an earlier start time, that was the first time we'd ever done it. People, I think, even though we had pushed it out, when you've done something for forever, you don't even notice that it's there anymore, right? And so when we talked about this and looking at a traditional versus a DOI, I'm happy the DOI won, just because I think it would be very hard for Mrs. Chancellor's department to try to communicate, okay, this year we're a week early, this year we're a week later. And I think it's going to be hard to the customer, our parents, to keep track of when we've decided. So that was a big point for us, is being transparent and open with our parents so that they're accustomed to it. So if this calendar or this type of calendar continues, I think, one, it's giving people more buy-in into really looking at what matters the most for them. And then two, as we move forward, I think people will adjust to it. But we're going to have some work to do. You're exactly right. Even though we still had hub registrations and other things going on and pushing it, it's just some folks just still didn't catch it.
Well, it seems to me the great majority of parents that I talked to were really more in favor of the earlier start date. I heard a lot of support for it, but I wasn't even aware of the confusion about it, and because I watched all the Facebook postings. And then the other question I had, and I didn't know if this had come up in any of the discussions, was because we are DOI is going to adding minutes to the day, as some districts around Texas are doing, so that they are getting out even earlier or whatever. I know Frisco added, I think, 10 minutes to the day, and as a result are getting out quite early.
We added 10 minutes to the elementary school 2 years ago to kind of get us to this calendar. Of course, Dr. Mike, I'm going to kind of pitch it over to you. We kind of take our lead from that direction, so.
I mean, I still have reservations about a summer that's so long that we lose a learning, a retention edge, but, so, I mean, that's.
I'd like to go back to our early discussion when Mr. Hardcastle said that rank is something that's, no. You know, Ms. Huey, honestly, that's not something at this point I'm ready to make a recommendation to do. Is it something that we could look forward to in the future? I'm not going to tell you no. I think you guys know by now. I'm open to a lot of ideas and explore them. And so that is something I could see, you know, maybe we take a look at. But like anything, there are unintended consequences to all of that. So as you start adding on minutes to the day and doing that, there are other things that are going to falter because of that. So I'd really want to study that intently. I'd want to work with our teachers on that, on what that looks like, and our principals, because it's easy to sit up here and say it, but I think we would need to gather the buy-in to make something like that happen and make it happen smoothly.
Make mistakes first. Okay,
what you said.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 proposed option A calendar as the school calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Foreman.
And congratulations, Mr. Jarrett, for your first presentation.
Yeah.
To the
I was
board.
going to say, I didn't think I'd heard from you yet.
You didn't have to say much, but you did really well. Item D, consent. 1, internal audit. A, annual audit plan. 2, Northeast Educational Foundation. A, Northeast Educational Foundation MOU with NEISD. 3, business services. A, donations. B, 50,000 purchases. 4, operations. A, professional service contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments supporting the 2015 bond design and construction requirements. 5, end of consent. Do I have a board member wishing to pull an item from consent?
Yes, ma'am, I need to pull 4A.
4A, professional service contracts. Okay, anybody else? So do I have a motion to approve consent without 4A?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hasso. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Okay, Ms. Huey?
Thank you. I've asked for this to be pulled after some text messages and emails that I got today from some CBAC people with their concerns about the contract being awarded for maintenance of the security cameras and access control card readers. I did read up on it, but I felt that maybe Mr. Sullivan might need to make all of us aware of the concerns of some of the CBAC members and his response to them, which I thought was I thought it was great, but it did raise some concerns with CBAC members that we were using bond money for service contracts. And it's some CBAC members, a couple of them that I highly respect that have been on the committee for a long time, so.
Can you speak to that, Mr.?
Madam President, Gary will come to the podium.
He was waiting for his.
I'm happy to address the issue. So I'd like to cover 6 points in addressing Ms. Huey's concern and to make sure the board is completely aware of what we're attempting to do here. In the consent agenda item 4, which is agenda item related to my department, there are 2 projects we're recommending to the board for your consideration this evening that are going to be funded out of the bond contingency. The first one, which we had unanimous support from the CBAC, 11 members voted yes, there were no dissenting members, is to spend $300,000 out of Dr. Mica's contingency, the global contingency, to do additional LED lighting upgrades. The first strategy Dr. Lamford has is to replace all of the fluorescent lights in the gymnasiums with new LED fixtures. It's about $1,400 a gym. We have a large number of gyms in the district. This will save the district, based on his estimates, about $280,000 annually in maintenance electricity costs. So this particular recommendation is going to pay for itself in a little over a year. He would take any monies he has left over from the $300,000 and continue to do lighting improvements at the elementary school campuses. And again, this had full support of the CBAC. There were no dissenting votes. The second project we recommended has to do with our safety and security program. In this bond program, we installed 1,869 new IP digital cameras to augment the 5,500 analog cameras that had been installed in previous bond programs. We've got approximately 7,369 cameras. We also installed 866 card readers at our campuses, at an average of about 5 card readers at an elementary school, 5 at a middle school, and 70 at a high school. The district has a department that maintains our security cameras, access control systems, and that's for the security cameras, it's the maintenance department. Chief McCampbell monitors and essentially oversees the access control systems, but the maintenance department would go service any card readers that are not operating. At any given point in time, we have about 100 cameras that are not working, which is about 1.5% of our cameras, since we've got almost 7,400 cameras. But the campus principals don't like their cameras not to be working. Now, the facility maintenance department has 3 people to maintain all this stuff. They have a foreman and they have 2 technicians, and frankly, they just don't have enough manpower to maintain such a large system. Plus, we've added to their load by increasing the number of cameras by about 30% in this bond program. So we're recommending to augment that staff, a service contractor, 360 Integrated, our security partner, and I'd like to recognize Brian Cox, if you could stand. He's with 360 Integrated. He's one of our program managers that does a lot of our work. They're the ones that put in the A-phone system, which was one of the tenets of our safety and security program for this current bond program. They also installed all the security cameras, the IP cameras, and all the access control card readers. We're recommending for your consideration tonight that we hire them through a service agreement, and for the next 2 years, they'll be helping the maintenance department maintain all these systems. The cost to do that is going to be $325,000, $131,000 per year in the labor costs to go out to the campuses and to look at security cameras annually to make sure they're operating properly, to make any adjustments to them if they're not pointed in the correct direction, to make sure all the silicon seals are intact, because one of the problems with a camera on the outside of the building is if water gets into it, it can easily destroy it. They would also maintain all the access control card readers and the controllers. Now, we have $131,000 set aside annually for the labor costs. We have $25,000 set aside for any equipment that is out of warranty. Now, a camera comes with a 3-year warranty, 3-year on parts, 1 year on labor. So in years 2 and 3, we would need to hire somebody, or somebody would have to replace the camera, and we get the camera replaced at no cost, and after year 3, it would go at the actual cost of a camera, which is $500. And the card readers, the cost to replace a card reader is 0, because the card readers have an unlimited warranty on the actual material. But the labor cost to replace the card reader or controller is about $200, and the controllers, which is the more expensive part of the system, is about $1,000 if it's a main controller, and it's about $500 if it's a sub-controller. And again, these costs for repairing or for replacing parts is covered in the $25,000 annual allowance. And then we have a one-time cost of $13,000 to set up what's called a Site Al management system, so that the maintenance department, as well as 360, has visual identification of all the IP cameras and card readers, and they can see them online, which ones maybe are not working, and they can provide immediate response. The idea here is to provide immediate response to service these systems. This is an important system to the district, and frankly, 3 people to maintain all of these systems is just not going to be adequate. And we don't want to put any campus in jeopardy by having a non-functioning camera that's non-functioning for a period of time when it could have provided some critical asset, a capability to prevent an incident at the schools. We have reviewed this proposal with Mr. Lopez, our attorney, and he says, based on the bond election order that went to the voters in November of 2015, that this is an acceptable expense from the bond program. The CBAC members, there were 3 that dissented. We had 8 yeses and 3 nos. Their main concern was spending bond dollars on maintenance and repair type operations. They thought that would be better suited under an M&O type budget allocation. The problem with that is we would have to apply these resources to the M&O program, which is already stretched pretty thin. The bond program right now has a very healthy contingency, $10.7 million. So we felt $325,000 out of that expenditure, out of that bond contingency, was a reasonable approach. But again, the dissenting members of the CBAC just felt it was better and more appropriate to charge it to the M&O than to the bond program. One way that we could combat this issue is we could hire more staff. If we don't want to hire a contractor, then we need more in-house staff. But when you hire in-house staff, all the benefits and all the other costs come along with every staff member that you add to the staff. So a contractor, one benefit of a contractor is that all those costs don't come along with the services. Brian and his company have committed, is it a 6-person team? 5-person team, on call 24/7, 365 for our school district to come out and maintain any camera or access control card reader. They're going to have parts stored on hand at their company so that they can go replace cameras and card readers immediately. So again, it's all about providing high-quality service, responsive service to the campuses. And right now, the campuses are struggling because we just can't get to all the non-functioning equipment as fast as they would like. So this was our recommendation for you to consider this evening.
Okay, I think part of the other question that they seem to have had, though, was were these systems, I'm trying to find the wording here, one of them talked about the benefit over the proposed term, but it seemed to be, from 2 of them, a concern about the systems seeming to have a frequency of malfunctions. Would this be considered a higher than usual number of malfunctions, or is this, it seems to me it's a small percentage in light of the huge number of cameras, but what would be considered?
I would say we don't have, we were very careful in how we selected what cameras to use and what card readers to use. I would say that we don't have an issue with the equipment. It's just that this equipment is not designed to last forever.
Okay.
I guess another analogy I would use is if you buy anything, a car, a washing machine, a refrigerator, they can always sell you a service agreement to go along with it. Either you pay somebody to maintain it, or you make sure you take it to the appropriate place to keep it maintained. And if you don't look at it until it breaks, then it's just going to break when you don't want it to break. Okay. So what we're trying to do is be proactive and have the capability to service this equipment on a regular basis versus just to be reactive and take care of it when it's broken.
Well, if nothing else, I think it does show that our CBAC committee is obviously paying attention to things that are going on. So from that aspect, I appreciate them bringing this forward, but I also strongly appreciate what you're doing to address their concerns and make sure that their questions are being answered. And I know that 360 is a great team to work with, so that I think that it seems to me that their questions hopefully will be eased up by some of the responses today. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huey. We have a very active dialogue, Mr. Clary and I, with the CBAC, not only in here when we have our meeting, but whenever we're asking for their input in preparation for a board meeting. They're more than happy to provide us their comments. And we welcome them.
But that's part of the reason they're there, too.
And they've been, some of these members have been on the committee since 2003.
Right.
16 years.
I think two of the people that I have stuff from are from the very beginning, so for some of the original members, so that's pretty great. So, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions I can answer?
Mr. Clary, did you want to say something?
If there's a concern, about using bond dollars for that, we can bring this back, and do a little bit more research to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
I know that was part of the concern, but it seemed to me that two of the three people in particular were more concerned about the quality or the reliability of the system, and if this was putting more money into a system that maybe should be replaced or improved or something like that. So I feel comfortable with the use of the bond money based on Mr. Lopez's overview of this. But I felt like I needed to bring up their questions of the reliability or the quality of the system too.
If we've had concerns about reliability, they haven't really reached my desk. We have had some concerns and some discussion with 360 about the software that runs the program for the safety,
right.
for the security, the door part, the software.
Right.
But as far as there's a lot of moving parts.
Sure.
Whenever a door, when you put an automatic lock on the door, well, that also includes, having to refigure the door hardware. So there's a lot of moving parts that come with it. I'm very confident and very comfortable with what we have out there. A lot of times with the security cameras, sometimes it's vandalism that we deal with. But for the most part, I have not received comments about about faulty equipment, but there's just going to be times when things just don't work.
Just happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And Ms. Huey, just to reiterate that, just remember y'all that part of my charge to the executive staff was to go out and be visiting campuses. And so I know Mr. Clare, I think, is leading the way with campus visits with executive staff. And out of all of those.
Mr. Villarreal would like to disagree with that statement.
Dan, do you know where campuses are?
Gotcha.
But even with the focus meetings with principals, I think the thing that I like that Gary said and that I want y'all to remember is that this is really about delivering a service back to the campuses and meeting their needs. I can tell you as a former middle school principal, when the cameras are down, it's not fun. Because it always seems that the camera that's broken is the one that you needed at that given moment.
Exactly.
With the skeleton crew that Mr. Clary has, because over years as we've had to cut due to funding, right? And if you remember, House Bill 3 monies, we're still sorting through.
Yep.
They're still telling us $3,000 to $5,000 to train a teacher in a reading academy. It concerns me greatly when they say we didn't realize we had that many teachers in the state to train. So there's still a lot working up, and so I think this approach to it was really about not strapping the general fund with a cost when we had an additional option there because of the great management that Gary has had with our bond. So I'm glad that the CBAC brought it up. That's democracy at its finest, right?
Exactly.
That they're going to speak about it.
They're doing their homework. and
But
that's exactly
I really want to applaud Ron and Gary for that because what they're trying to do is listen to what principals are saying and then trying to find creative solutions in which to address them. And so it good for them for doing it.
I'm just going to say that this is by no means a permanent, that this may be, gives us time to evaluate whether we can, in the future, do it ourselves, and of course, evaluate which would be more beneficial to the district by doing contract or by hiring our own. But you heard, like Gary said, when we hire staff, everything, the things that come with that. So we'll continue evaluating this process, and very confident and very comfortable with the partners we have with Integrated
definitely with
360. They've
yeah.
been very supportive of us during this process. We couldn't have done it without them. So very confident with what they put forth for us, and I think it is a good thing for our campuses.
Right, thank you all, though. I appreciate it. So, Madam Chair, I'd like to move to approve item 4A as presented.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Clary. Item 9, reports. A, financial statement review of expenditures, that's been provided to you. B, awarded bid report, that's been provided to you. Item 10, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies. 2, a personnel action. 3, a student disciplinary matter. 4, a complaint about a particular student. 5, or pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas 78217. Ms. Huey.
Tom Cummins.
Ms. Grona, members of the board, Dr. Mica, my name is Tom Cummins, and I'm representing the Northeast AFT. I'm also speaking on behalf of I'm the substitute for our president, Patsy Esterline, who couldn't be here because she has a family concern. First, we'd like to offer our congratulations to Mr. Leos on his appointment to the board. We're very pleased that you're representing education as an educator, and also coming from a district which I'm sure, I work in South San a lot, so I'm familiar with Harlandale, and I'm sure the many experiences you have will be very complimentary to your role on the board. Ms. Esterline also insisted that I bring a pair of socks for Dr. Mica.
Thank you.
She wanted it in time for the holiday season, and she was very disappointed that she wouldn't be here. They're a special pair of socks because they say, "I love public schools."
Awesome.
Now, we didn't knit them. Trust me on that. They're produced by Nebraska's I Heart Public Schools, which is very similar to Bear County's Go Public. But what is interesting about them is they do have an online store, and I certainly think that that's something that Go Public should be looking at, as well as maybe complimenting what Ms. Chancellor does. And we compliment you also on what you've done. That's great. So I will pass this to Ms. King, and if you don't get them, you know who's responsible. Finally, we just want to say on behalf of Northeast AFT, we wish you the best over the holidays and a healthy and happy new year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Item 11, discussion and possible action regarding board members' requests for items to be placed on a future agenda and/or request for reports from the administration. Do I have a board member requesting anything? Seeing none, item 12, adjournment, and the time is 8:45. Thank you all for being here.